He may ask me for me to give him things that I'm afraid to give him. Namely, he might ask me to give him myself. I can just jump ahead for a minute, and maybe Father Jeff could say something about this too, but one of the experiences of prayer I had over a number of years was to come into the presence of God, and then in the back of my mind, so to speak, he was kind of saying to me, how about becoming a priest? How about becoming a priest? Ooh, I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to hear about that because that means I'd have to give my life to the church, and God knows, you only know, God, where I wouldn't be able to go where I want, do what I want, see who I want. I'd have to give up my freedom. So I was afraid. And I think a lot of people are afraid. But maybe that's too unique an example. Let's say about you. You may have this experience in a couple years. Every one of you in some way, you may have the experience of being afraid to come into the presence of God because the question he may put to you is, well, what about marrying this person? What about marrying this guy? What about marrying this girl? See? There's a certain fear about coming to know God well because we have the sense that he might ask a great deal of us. And we have this strong sense that we're not capable of doing what he might ask us to do. And so I think this is important to notice right at the beginning when we talk about prayer, is that we human beings are kind of afraid of prayer. And yet, Moses' attraction to the burning bush tells us that there's something in us that would like to pray. And this is where it gets to that question about who do you know that does pray, and what is it about that person? Do you find that attractive? I know I always have. That people that pray seem to be at peace with themselves. They seem to be able to inhabit their own skin. Now, let me give an example of that, the way that might play out. What if, and this could happen to anybody in this room. It's a terrible thing. Maybe I used this example last time or something like it, but this could happen. You could, today, going back home tonight, you could get hit by a car. So could I. And we could be paralyzed, and we could be, in a coma or something. We could be conscious, we could be aware of ourselves. I could be lying there in the hospital, unable to speak, unable to open my eyes, but conscious, right? Not able to communicate to anybody. And maybe not even able to hear. Let's say I can't hear. The way my injury is, I can't hear. So I'm just lying there. And if you imagine yourself in that situation, who do you talk to? Who do you talk to? Do you? You do if you know who he is, don't you? What if you don't know that God is there, or you're not familiar with him? You're kind of on your own, aren't you? We say that we talk to God. That's because we're here. We believe in God. We believe that God is there. We believe that there is such a thing as this, that his desire to know us. But maybe we don't really know that yet. And maybe this is a way that if this makes the point for me that if I'm in a place where I can't communicate with anybody else, then I'm going to discover the importance of being able to relate to God. And then I can find that when I'm most alone, there God is with me. There God is with me. And once I find that out, then I'll bet I'll pray for the rest of my life. So the thing is that, we have, when you were 5 years old, you didn't know it, but you had the capacity to learn algebra. You had the capacity maybe to play the piano. You had the capacity to act in a play, to sing a song, to play football. You had all these things, but when you were young, you didn't know that yet. They all had to wait to come out, huh? And you had the capacity to be a friend. You're learning that in this time of your life now, probably, the importance of having how to be a friend to somebody. over time. How to be a good friend. You have that within you. And a lot of people just stop at that level. Outside, people that don't believe, they don't take note of the fact that we have a capacity to relate to God too. And maybe we don't know about that. That's why we have this story of Moses. It says he didn't know what he was in for that day when he went out to just the shepherd, herd the sheep. And he discovered within him this ability to relate to the living God. And this is not the end of the story of Moses' relation to God by any means. One other thing we might note about that is that Moses' personal relation to God in prayer, and this is the beginning of Moses' prayer, had enormous consequences for other people. The effects of Moses' prayer shaped the people of Israel. This one man, who, as he said to God, when God sends him, I want you to go to talk to Pharaoh and lead my people out of slavery, he says, I can't talk well. I don't know how to talk well. He said, don't worry about that. I'll have Aaron do that for you, your brother. Don't worry. I know you can't talk well. He didn't pick somebody perfect. He picked somebody that was kind of weak in many respects. But then he used this experience of Moses to change other people's lives completely. So, one point I want to make at this point is if I could really try to slap you upside the head with this point, is that prayer is not so much what you give to God, what I give to God. It is what God gives to us. That is to say, He opens Himself to us. How can you and I climb up to heaven and imagine that God is up here on the roof and there's a door right there. We put a ladder up to the top and just pull the doors open and force God to talk to us? We can't do that. God, if we're going to have a relationship with God, it has to come from Him. He has to open Himself to us and invite us in. And that's what we believe. This is hard to believe. A lot of people in the world cannot believe this and don't believe it. That's what Christians believe. Christians believe that God comes to meet us and wants to share life with us. So He gives us the gift of prayer, and then He asks us to give that gift back to Him in return. But first, it's His gift to us. Now, that's kind of a helpful thing to know because it takes some of the pressure off of you and me. If prayer is God's gift to us, and He's this all-powerful, all-loving Father, then what I need to do is follow His lead. I don't have to invent it all myself. He doesn't expect me to figure out how to do it. I can learn how to do it, and other people can show me. Indeed, we'll see in a minute, that's what the disciples asked Jesus. Notice, they see Jesus at prayer, His disciples, and they say, Lord, teach us to pray. Teach us to pray. We have to be taught to pray. When you have little children, how did you learn how to speak? Your parents said to you, now say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Say thank you. They said, say hello, Uncle Joe. Hello, Uncle Joe. That's how we learn to talk, is that adults literally put words in our mouth. And after a while, they become our own words. And that's the way it is with God teaching us to pray. And literally, they asked Jesus, teach us to pray. And what does He do? He says, Our Father who art in heaven.